Question 4 says, describe any impact you have had outside of your classroom and how your efforts have led to changes for students in your school, in your community, or beyond. Additionally, please consider how you have supported other educators through activities such as mentoring, leading professional development activities, or co-teaching, etc. So I'm going to answer this in 3 parts. I'm going to talk about an enrichment that I started when my students were freshmen called Double Up. Then I'm going to talk about my role as the subject facilitator on the theater arts team, and then I'll end by talking about my role as the advisory coordinator and academic chair for the class of 2014. So for Double Up, basically what happened was I had a set of students who were really excelling freshman year. We had very high expectations. They were meeting them all, and they were actually doing so with ease. There were only a handful of them, but I didn't want them to get complacent, and I wanted to push them as hard as they needed to be pushed so that they could reach their full potential. So essentially I rounded these students up, had a meeting with their parents, explained the situation, where they were at on their ACT, how far I thought they could go, and how much work needed to be done in order to get them there above and beyond even the already rigorous curriculum here at Bulls Prep. And we began this group called Double Up, which meets every Wednesday and has for the last 3 years. And what Double Up is it's about maximizing their ACT growth as much as possible while also improving their overall cultural literacy and getting them ready to deal with college level courses at an even higher level than is already happening across the school. So we have weekly meetings. The bulk of our meetings is generally taken up with what is essentially a book club. We've read well over a dozen books, anything from The Color Purple to Kill a Mockingbird, House on Mango Street, Life of Pi. We've read Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers. We've read a biography of the Beatles. This year my students are seniors. They're picking their own books, so we're reading everything from a book called Blue Notes on Black Feminism, which looks at blues and jazz singers from the 20th century, African-American blues and jazz singers through a feminist lens. We just finished Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, which was one of my student selections. So that's the bulk of our weekly meetings. We also, in the formation of Double Up, formed the first, and really only at this early stage in my school's life, a successful parent booster group. And so we've raised thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars through the work of the Double Up students' parents and their vast network and vast efforts. And so that's been a really great way to not only allow us to do exciting things with the Double Up students, but to set a template for what fundraising can be, even in an urban environment where that is generally seen as something that's more difficult. We have holiday potlucks every year where members from all the families come in with foods that they've prepared at home around Christmas time. We've gone to the Art Institute of Chicago. We screen films that have been adapted from the books that we watch, either here or at movie theaters if they happen to be in theaters. And the summer before my students' junior year, I took a dozen of my Double Up students out to the East Coast to look at 8 colleges. We visited Harvard, we visited Yale, and half a dozen other schools in the New York and Boston areas to not only expose them to what great educational environments outside of Chicago might look like, but also just to expand their horizons and give them a sense of what the East Coast has to offer and let them know that there's a whole world outside of Chicago, which is what they're used to. As the subject facilitator for the theater arts team, I'm essentially what at another campus might be called a department chair. So I hold the weekly meetings between myself and the 3 other theater arts teachers, keep an eye on data, on planning, on coordinating our quarterly data conferences. I observe other teachers within the department and give them feedback. Right now we're actually at a bit of a difficult time on our team. We have 3 different teachers who have 3 different levels of experience and have 3 vastly different sets of needs. And so this year I'm actually holding 3 separate meetings every week. I have one teacher who sort of needs to be pushed on higher level things, making the classroom more rigorous. I have a teacher who's been here for a couple of years but still needs work on lesson planning and aligning her objectives and assessing them well. And then a brand new teacher who's new not only to the school but to the subject. And in that class, or rather in those meetings, it's much more about making sure that she's clear on the content and on the basic classroom management pieces that need to go into forming the foundations of good teaching. So that's a big part of my job here at Bulls Prep, is making sure that not only my theater classroom but the other theater classrooms are running smoothly. And I've really enjoyed growing as a leader and having to learn different ways of working with different types of personalities in order to help empower my colleagues to have the best results that they possibly can while enjoying their experience. Finally, when my students, as I mentioned, when my students were sophomores, I became the advisory coordinator for the class of 2014. I've since also taken on the role of academic chair. I have a number of jobs that fall under this heading. One thing that I do is I supervise the academic RTI system, so I coordinate interventions, I track interventions, make sure to hold staff members, including myself, accountable to implementing those interventions, and any students who are really struggling academically, we do everything in our power through the RTI system to get them back on track as quickly as possible. I also write and send out cultural lessons across the entire grade level, and I've done that for the last few years. The subjects can range from everything to leadership, to organization and time management, to just about anything that you could think of. I was even in charge of the sex ed one year. Basically anything that the entire group needs across the grade level that isn't already being filled in some other capacity, that falls on me to make sure those resources are there for our teachers. Speaking of resources, I also curate resources, so if one advisor's got something great put together, I make sure to upload that to a site where everybody can access it so that we're not reinventing the wheel and that we can share resources and share one another's great ideas. I send out a weekly advisory blast where I essentially amalgamate information from all of the various parties throughout the school, including the college team this year. And on Monday mornings, an email goes out to all advisors across the school, making sure that they're in the loop on every major action step that needs to occur for college, or for prom, or for whatever it might be. And I'm just generally on hand to troubleshoot anytime an advisor is having a problem with their group or with an individual student. So I do spend a lot of time going out of my way to keep a really clear pulse on the grade level and make sure that we're staying ahead of any potential issues. I've been lucky to go second with this class of 2014, so my class is the second graduating class. So one of the things that's been foundational to my job as the advisory coordinator and academic chair is to sort of go on these constant listening tours to make sure that we're learning from the advisors who've gone before us and that we're avoiding some of the same mistakes and crumbles that inevitably happen when you're trying something for the first time. So one of the things that I pride myself and our group of advisors on is that we've managed to circumvent a lot of the problems and the stumbling blocks that have come before us and learn from our school's history so that we can be more efficient and more effective.